Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to tackle something really useful, I think. It's the skill of reading and, crucially, summarizing English text effectively.
Absolutely. I mean, we're all drowning in information, right? So whether it's for work or study or just figuring out a long article you found online,
Totally.
being able to cut through that and just, grasp the core concepts quickly, that's key.
It really is. And for this deep dive, we looked into some really practical advice from English Voice Club about boosting your reading comprehension in English.
Mm-hmm.
So think of this as us trying to equip you with a kind of toolkit, helping you become more confident, faster at reading, and better at seeing what really matters in a text.
Yeah, our mission today basically is to give you some solid techniques so you can understand English texts better, summarize them faster, and feel good about it. We're really going to focus on spotting those main ideas and seeing how they're different from, say, the examples or the extra bits.
Okay, let's jump right in. Why is summarizing actually important? I mean, sometimes it just feels like, extra work after you've already done the reading.
That's fair. It can feel like that. But summarizing is kind of the ultimate test, isn't it? Like, if you can summarize something well,
Right.
it shows you've actually understood it. Not just the words, but the ideas, how they fit together, what's more important, what's less.
Ah, okay.
And if you find it hard to summarize, well, that's usually a sign that maybe you haven't quite grasped the whole picture yet. It's like trying to explain a complex process in simple terms. You have to really get it first.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. So if summarizing proves understanding, how do we find the thing to summarize? That main idea everything else connects to.
Well, any decent piece of writing, it has a core message, right?
Right.
A central point the author is trying to get across, finding that point. That's step one for understanding, for summarizing everything.
Okay.
Now, there isn't like one single method that works every time. No magic bullet, unfortunately. You sort of have to look at the text as a whole.
Right, no shortcuts. But surely there are clues, things we can actively look for.
Oh, definitely. There are signposts. First, always check out the titles and any headings. Authors use these to flag the big stuff.
Makes sense. Like a newspaper headline.
Exactly. Tells you the main story up front. What else? Look at the first sentence. Often, not always, but often, the first sentence of the whole text or even of a paragraph will give you a little summary of what's coming.
Okay, that's practical. Like they're putting their main point out there early. What's the third signpost?
Look for things that keep coming up. Recurring topics, themes, ideas. If you see a subject mentioned again and again, linking different sentences and paragraphs, that repetition is a pretty strong clue that you've found the central focus.
Okay, let's make this concrete.
Yeah.
The source material used an example, right? A text called Gugu Yimithir, an unusual language.
Yes. And right there in the title, that word unusual.
Yeah, it jumps out.
It tells you immediately the focus is going to be on what makes this language different. It makes you ask, okay, unusual how? And finding the answer to that question leads you straight to the main idea.
Okay, and the first sentence of that example, did it give the main idea directly?
In that specific case, not quite. The first sentence mentioned it's spoken in Queensland and Hopevale in Australia, which is good background info, helpful context.
Right, where it's from.
But it doesn't state why it's unusual. It just sets the scene.
So first sentences are helpful, but not always the golden ticket for the main idea itself.
Exactly. But then, the source pointed out, most of the rest of that example text did focus on one specific thing.
Which was?
How Gugu Yimithir speakers use compass directions north, south, east, west all the time. Because their language apparently lacks words like left and right that depend on where the speaker is standing.
Oh, okay.
And that answers the unusual how question from the title. That's the core difference, the recurring theme that makes the language stand out.
Got it. So we find the main idea. But texts are full of other stuff too. Examples, explanations, side notes. How do we sort the essential main points from all the supporting fluff or, the details?
Yeah, that's the next big challenge. Telling the difference between general ideas, the big picture meaning, and the details or examples that support them. It's really crucial.
Right, crucial.
Because if you mix them up, if you focus too much on a specific example, you might miss the main point it's illustrating. It makes understanding harder and summarizing accurately almost impossible. You get bogged down.
And the source said it's not always obvious, right? Like sentences can mix general statements and specific details together.
Exactly. It's often blended. You might get a sentence starting with a general point and then immediately giving an example within that same sentence. There aren't always neat little labels saying main idea here or detail alert.
So you need context.
You need context, and you need to look for clues within the sentences and paragraphs around it.
Okay, let's look at those 5 example sentences from the Gugu Yemather text again. The source categorized them. Number 1, about Queensland and Hopevale.
That was called general. It introduces the topic, sets the scene, broad information.
Right. Sentence 2, about it having only about 300 speakers.
Detail. Interesting fact, maybe, but not essential for understanding the linguistic feature that makes it unusual.
Okay. Sentence 3, the one stating it lacks left and right type directions.
Definitely general. That's the core unusual feature itself, a main idea.
Makes sense. Sentence 4 explained what lacking those directions means using absolute directions like north-south. The source called this one in between.
Yeah, sort of, because while it's explaining a key concept and that explanation is vital for most readers to understand sentence 3, it's not the main unusual feature itself, but rather a clarification of it. So maybe not strictly essential for a super high-level summary, but pretty important for actual understanding for most people.
Right. Clarifies a potentially tricky concept. And the last one, sentence 5, gave an example like saying someone is north of the tree.
Pure detail. It just illustrates sentence 4. Helps you picture it, but the core concept was already stated.
Okay, so the big takeaway here is focus on the general ideas to get the overall meaning. The details are, well, details. They add color, but the general points are the skeleton.
Precisely. You need the skeleton to understand the shape of the thing.
All right, so we know why we need to separate them. How do we get better at doing it in practice? Any strategies?
Yeah, the source suggested a few good ones. First up, skim the text first. Don't just dive in and read word for word immediately.
Just a quick read through.
Exactly. Get a feel for the overall topic, the general direction. That quick pass gives you the context you need later to actually tell if something is a main point or just an example supporting it, like seeing the whole forest before looking at individual trees.
Okay, skimming first. Good tip. What else?
Look for linking words or phrases. These are your friends. Things like, for example,
For instance.
specifically, in particular. When you see those, it's a pretty strong signal that what's coming next is a detail, an illustration of a point that was probably just made.
Ah, okay, like little signposts. Example ahead. That's really useful.
Uh,
What was the last strategy?
just being aware, consciously aware, that sentences themselves can be mixed bags. A single sentence might contain both a general idea and a specific detail.
So we have to kind of dissect the sentence sometimes.
Yeah, you have to actively think, okay, which part of this sentence is the main point and which part is the extra illustration or explanation? It requires a bit more active engagement.
Right, it's not always neatly packaged. Okay, now let's tackle something that trips up a lot of people reading in English, especially if it's not their first language.
Yeah.
Unknown words. What do you do when you hit a word you just don't know?
Yeah, that's super common. And the first piece of advice from the source is simple. Don't panic.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True. But getting stuck on one word can derail your whole reading flow. There are ways to handle it without having to understand every single word perfectly.
Okay, like what? What's the first strategy?
Look at proper nouns, capitalized words, people, places, organizations. Often, readers get worried about these, but names like Queensland or Hopevale.
The examples from before?
Exactly. Even if you don't know exactly where they are, the context usually makes it clear their places. And often, you don't need the precise detail to get the main point of the sentence or paragraph. If it is important, it'll usually be explained.
So, use the context. Don't sweat the specifics unless you have to. Got it. What's another type of word to watch for?
Words that signal importance. We mentioned linking words for details, but there are also words flagging key ideas. Think important, notable, significant, essential. If a sentence uses one of those words, like the example, a notable feature is, that sentence is probably carrying some weight. It's worth trying a bit harder to understand the gist of that sentence, even if some other words are fuzzy.
Right. The author's basically pointing and saying, pay attention to this bit. Makes sense. And the third strategy.
Look for words that echo the title or the beginning of the text. They might not be the exact same words. They could be paraphrased.
Meaning said in a different way.
Yeah, same idea, different words, like how unusual appeared in the title, and then the text discussed the specific unusual features. Seeing those core concepts pop up again, even rephrased, tells you they're likely tied to the main ideas.
Okay, that's clever. So the big picture for unknown words isn't necessarily grabbing a dictionary every 5 seconds.
Definitely not, especially if you're short on time. The more efficient way is to focus your energy on understanding the general ideas and the really key words within those ideas. You can often get the essential meaning even with a few gaps in your vocabulary. It lowers the pressure.
That feels much more manageable. Okay, so just to wrap this part up, we've talked about why summarizing is key. It shows real understanding. We've covered how to hunt for the main idea using titles, first sentences, recurring stuff, and the crucial difference between those big general ideas and the supporting details.
Right. And then we got into practical ways to spot those general ideas, like skimming first, looking for linking phrases, and recognizing that sentences can mix things up.
And finally, some solid strategies for dealing with unknown words without letting them stop you in your tracks, focusing on proper nouns, words indicating importance, and repeated concepts.
Exactly. Put all that together, focus on the core message, understand the structure, handle vocabulary smartly, and you really can boost your English reading and summarizing skills quite significantly.
So the challenge for you listening is to maybe think about this next time you read something in English. Could be anything, news, an email, whatever. Try to actively look for that main idea. Ask yourself, what's the core point here? See if you can consciously separate it from the examples.
Yeah, and think about those unknown words. Instead of stopping, can you use the context? Can you focus on the words that seem most important? How might these strategies change how you approach reading day to day?
It's really about becoming a more active, more efficient reader, isn't it? Being able to dive in and pull out the real value from whatever text you encounter. What are the reading hurdles do you face? And how could these techniques maybe be adapted to help with those too? Something to think about.